Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am here with another tag video for you today. It is the Intergalactic tag video because of the release of Starflight by Melissa Landers by Disney Hyperion. This is a book that I picked up at Comic-Con. I actually haven't read it yet, but the tags have started going around and this is on my list of things to read, so I figured that I would go ahead and answer the questions. So the first category is space, or a book that is out of this world, aka takes place on a different world. I had to think for a really long time to answer this one because 98% of what I read is either contemporary or it's like modern urban fantasy that takes place in our world, or it's like futuristic sci-fi that does not involve space travel, so they're still on Earth. So like almost everything that I read takes place in our world or in some alternate version of our world. But I did eventually decide on the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first in a new series. I don't remember the overarching title of the series, but it is about a world called the Stillness, which is a single continent that regularly experiences large-scale catastrophic extinction events, and when those happen they're called seasons. So basically there are the 4 normal seasons of, you know, winter, spring, summer, fall, the 5th season being the death season when a lot of people die off. And this one begins with a season. There is a massive rip in the continent that is actually done by a human who has the ability to move the Earth, and the rip goes all the way down to the magma core, so bad stuff is going to happen. But it tells the story of a few different sort of people in different situations. Like there's a young girl who's getting taken to a school, there is a woman whose son has just died, and then there is a sort of young acolyte of the school that the young girl is getting taken to. And it is an odd book. I'm still not 100% sure what like the overarching story of the whole series is going to be about, even though I did finally figure out what was happening in this book. But it is really interesting and it has a really cool magic system, and the world building is really intricate and well done. As you might expect from N.K. Jemisin, she writes amazing fantasy. The next one is Black Hole, so a book that sucked you in. I have a few of these and none of them are going to be surprises because a book that sucked me in is usually a book that I can't stop talking about. So going in sort of reverse order of how I read them, the first is The House of Shattered Wings by Aliette de Bodard. I just talked about this in my January wrap-up video, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it is about a war-torn Paris that is, you know, devastated after a war by houses of battling angels, battling fallen angels rather. There are some elements of murder mystery to it and some elements of political intrigue because it's about sort of machinations between the different remaining houses in this, you know, war-ravaged ruin of Paris. There's also an immortal Vietnamese witch warlock. He's really cool, his name's Philip, and some other fascinating characters, so this one I absolutely love. The next one is going to be The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Again, not a big surprise. This is a modern day urban fantasy about a group of boys and a girl named Blue trying to find the sleeping Welsh king of Glendower in sort of rural Virginia. And then the last one is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. It has a very sort of Polish folklore bent to it, so it has some darker elements. There is a wood that is a malevolent force that is sort of creeping into their town, and there is a magician called the Dragon that takes girls away and keeps him in his tower for 10 years, and it's just wonderful. The magic system is fantastic, the characters are wonderful. The main character has this lovely relationship with her best friend Cassia that I just loved. It was like a bedrock relationship of this book, and it was just portrayed beautifully, so I loved this one. The next one is Lightspeed, so a book that you are anticipating so much that you could just travel at the speed of light to get to it. I mentioned both of these in my most anticipated releases of 2016, so they're not going to be huge surprises. They are Tell the Wind and Fire by Sarah Rees Brennan and The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. Tell the Wind and Fire is a retelling of Tale of Two Cities done in a modern day urban fantasy setting, and The Raven King is the final book of the Raven Boys. So the next category is Nebula, so a book that has a beautiful cover. I picked 2 of these. They are both contemporary YA. The first is Everything Everything by by Nicola Yoon. I put up a full review of this book, which I will link down below. I have some complicated feelings on the book as a whole, but I think that the cover is absolutely stunning. I really love it. I love the contrast of the, you know, sort of clean everything up here with just the little like paper airplane, and then the just sort of jumble of things down here. I think it's really evocative and just really, really lovely. And then the other one that I picked was To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. It's a fairly simple cover, but I think that it's really sweet, and I think that it portrays a lot of information about the book. I think that it gives you a really good sense of the character's personality, and I think that she looks really lovely, you know, the model that they used for the cover. They got a girl that is of the right race, which I think is always really important, and you just get like the sense of her life and her personality, and I just think it's really beautiful. So the next one is Multiverse, so a spin-off or companion series. I don't read a lot of spin-offs or companion series, so this one was a little bit tricky, but I eventually settled on Through the Dark, which is a Darkest Minds collection. It is a companion to the Darkest Minds series, which is by Alexandra Bracken. I've only read the first of 3 of these, but I really loved the first one, so I trust that the next 2 will be just as good. This one sort of fills in some holes from the original trilogy. It gives you some information about what characters were doing when they were not with the main character, because it is told from the point of view of Ruby. She is the only POV character in the books, so there are a couple characters that you sort of get to catch up on when they're not around her, which I think is great, and also sort of expands a little bit more on what happens after the series ends. So the next category is Gravity, so name your favorite romantic pairing that seems to be drawn towards each other. So I have a lot of these, but the one that I settled on was Kat and Ondavai from the Spirit Walker trilogy. So it begins with Cold Magic, and then is followed by Cold Fire, and finished by Cold Steel. I adore this series. I think that it is wonderful on all levels, in terms of character, in terms of world building, in terms of magic system, in terms of plot, but one of the things that is absolutely lovely about it is the main romantic pairing, which is Kat and Ondavai. They are hilarious, and Kat kind of hates Ondavai for a lot of the first book, which in her defense, he did try to kill her, and that makes their relationship sound kind of messed up, but it is fantastic. They have a wonderful way of understanding each other. They have a wonderful pull back and forth. Ondavai, like, you think he's really cool, and then it turns out that he's like this total nerd, and it's just absolutely lovely. I think that their relationship is beautiful, and I totally 100% shipped them, which is nice because they do get married in the first like 10% of the book. And so it was a little unclear in the first part of the book whether Ondavai was going to be the romantic lead or the villain. Because like sort of you could go one way or the other, but it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that he's going to be the romantic lead, and I just love him and I love her, and I think that they're both fantastic. This is a series that is a sort of alternate fantasy version of our world. It takes place in about this sort of mid-1800s, but the political climate and the just plain climate is totally different from ours, because first of all, they're in an extended ice age, which is only now, I think, starting to recede. And also it is a world in which instead of the Roman Empire wiping out the Carthaginian Empire, instead they fought to a standstill. And there are some other things that you learn further on that are sort of differences in the history. There are also these sort of troll-like beings that are kind of dinosaurs, but also lawyers. They're wonderful. This series has a lot going on, and it's difficult to condense because it is fairly intricate and has a lot of different threads happening, but seriously, this series is wonderful, and the main romantic pairing is one of the reasons in which it is wonderful. So the next category is Big Bang, or name the book that first got you started on reading. I don't have one, is the answer to this, because basically as soon as I started learning how to read, I never stopped. I was read to as a child, and as soon as I could do it on my own, I just have read ever since. So instead of doing that, I am going to tell you 3 books that I have read over and over and over again that I absolutely love and have sort of become formative for me in a way. So the first one of these is Jeremy Thatcher Dragonhatcher by Bruce Colville. This is an urban fantasy book about a young boy who stumbles into a magic shop and ends up purchasing a dragon egg, which he then has to hatch and you know, figure out how to feed, and it's sort of his adventures in taking care of this baby dragon. The next one is Spirit Horse by Ned Ackerman. This is about a young Native American boy who is going on his first horse raid and ends up getting sort of separated from the group when something goes wrong, and ends up sort of finding this pure white horse, which, because it is pure white, they believe has some sort of like spiritual aspect to it, but the horse has been sort of driven wild by abuse and neglect, and so he has to, you know, calm it and tame it. And it's a fairly standard coming of age story, and it was written by a white guy, so I have absolutely no idea how accurate the portrayal of Native Americans in this story is, but I was obsessed with horses as a child, and so this book was like perfect for me. So the final book that I wanted to share with you today, there were a lot of books that I read over and over again as a child, but this is one that I just adore. It is Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe. It is from the point of view of the dog on the cover. I believe his name is Harold, and they get a new bunny addition to the household, and it turns out that the bunny might be something of a vampire bunny, and it is just so charming and lovely, and I've just read it a million times. It ended up having a whole series of these, and I only read like maybe 2 or 3 of that whole series, but the first one is just delightful. The next category is Asteroid, which is either short story or novella that you love. I don't actually read a ton of short stories, but the ones that I picked were the Jeeves and Wooster collection. So one of these is The Inimitable Jeeves. There are a few of them, and they could really be read in any order, but I think that the short stories are a great place to start if you have any interest in the Jeeves and Wooster collections, because they don't take a lot of time, they're really funny, they can be read in any order that you want, and they are just light and fun and go by really quickly, and they get you a sense of the characters and the sort of style of telling the story that he has. They are just lovely and funny and a really fun way to pass the time. The next one on the list is Galaxy, or a book that has multiple POVs. I decided to go with the Have Mercy series for this one. I will put a picture of the first one here because I have lent out my copy of it, and so I don't have it to show you, but I can show you the remainder of the series, which is Shadow Magic, and then the third one is Dragon Soul, and the fourth is Steel Hands. I love these books. They are written by Jada Jones and Daniel Bennett. I had them on my top 5 list of last year. Each of these books has 4 different POV characters, and most of them do not repeat in between books, so it is quite a few multiple POVs. And the weird thing about it is that I pretty much loved all of them, which I would not have expected. It is a fantasy series. It begins when the sort of main country of this world, Volstov, is at war with its neighbor Kahan. They have been at war for years and years, possibly even generations, and their sort of main advantage in this war is their use of these robotic, alchemical, flying, sassy dragons that are very sentient and choose their riders and basically are their main defense against the Kahan, because the Kahan have better magic than they do. So each book has 4 POV characters, but sort of 2 sets of 2. So the sets in the first book are Rook and Tom. Rook is an airman of the Dragon Corps. He is foul-mouthed and kind of terrible, but also kind of funny, and Tom is the manners coach that is sent to the Aerial Corps to sort of try to whip them into shape because they keep causing international incidents because they're all terrible. And then the other 2 are Roy and Hal. Roy is a magician who has been sort of exiled because he got caught up in a nasty affair with the crown prince of another country, and Hal is the like tutor of the children of the estate that he ends up getting sent out to, and they have this sort of lovely connection and romance that ends up developing over the course of the series. I found this series really emotionally satisfying is the thing. I do have some issues with it. The portrayal of the Kahan gets a little bit iffy because they're pretty clearly based off of some Asian stereotypes. They managed to sort of mitigate that in later series by having point of view characters that are of the Kahan and, you know, giving them really full in-depth personalities and backstories and things, so it's not the worst portrayal I've ever seen, but it does get a little bit iffy. And then another one of my issues is that of the like 14 or so POV characters, I think only like 3 of them are women. So, you know, I have some issues with the series, but it was so emotionally satisfying that I just kind of don't even care. I love this series a lot. So the final category is Spaceship, so basically pick a book that has a title that would make a good name for a spaceship. and I kind of just want to go with Have Mercy again. I think that'd make a great name for a spaceship. And I might just leave it at that, because honestly I can't really think of anything else that would make a better name for a spaceship other than Have Mercy. So we'll just go with that. So that's gonna be it for the Intergalactic Book Tag. I hope you enjoyed it. If you feel like answering these questions yourself, feel free and please let me know. And I will see you guys very soon with another video. Thanks for watching. Bye!